This is the Mop Up. I'm David Feldman in New York City. Thank you so much for finding me. Please like this episode so I remain in your feed. And share it. Help me out. Share it. Fox News' Judge Jeanine Pirro was sworn in as interim U.S. attorney, pledging no more mercy for criminals. Then she turned to Donald Trump and said, "Don't worry, I wasn't talking about you." Donald Trump, right before leaving office the last time, pardoned Judge Jeanine's ex-husband, Albert Pirro, who had been convicted on 34 counts of tax evasion, and he served 11 months in prison. Judge Jeanine divorced him 12 years ago after 40 years of marriage, but they're still close enough for her to secure a pardon from Donald Trump for her ex-husband. Judge Jeanine from Fox News picked for Washington, D.C.'s interim attorney early in May once it became apparent that Ed Martin, Trump's first pick for interim Washington, D.C. attorney, would never get approved by the Senate, especially since he used his brief time as interim D.C. attorney as a stalking horse for Trump's enemies. He opened up a criminal investigation into Chuck Schumer, who Martin falsely accused of inciting violence against the Supreme Court after it overturned Roe v. Wade. Ed Martin also opened up an investigation into another Democratic congressman accusing him of inciting violence against Donald Trump. Meanwhile, Republican Congressman Corey Mills's impending arrest for domestic violence just hasn't seemed to materialize despite Washington, D.C., police being called out that night, despite reports that the woman was bruised, despite Washington, D.C. police conducting an internal investigation into why Republican Congressman Corey Mills wasn't arrested that night. But for some reason, Ed Martin, the Washington, D.C. attorney at the time, refused to press charges against Republican Congressman Corey Mills. Martin, who before Trump's inauguration was working as defense counsel for several January 6ers, is now inside the Justice Department, spearheading the incredibly busy Pardon Attorney Office, which in the past week has greenlit pardons for at least 30 white people. NBC News reporting lobbyists are charging right now as much as $5 million to secure a single pardon from President Donald Trump. Hey, he's creating jobs and opportunity. Back in 2021, right before Trump left office the first time, the New York Times reported former Trump White House attorneys were charging clients $50,000 to secure a pardon with an additional $50,000 bonus if they succeeded. Now it's $5 million for a pardon. Trump's right. Inflation is out of control. Although there were reports back then that Rudy Giuliani was charging $2 million for a pardon in 2020, but nobody paid him for that. So it's safe to say right now, pardons are going for $5 million. 5 years ago, roughly $100,000. Donald Trump setting the record for most presidential pardons in a single year. Nobody comes close because when it comes to Donald Trump, it's all about Christian forgiveness. And by that I mean forgiving Christians, white ones, white male Christians, straight white Christian males, because Trump is all about straight, white, Christian male forgiveness. On his first day back in office, Trump pardoned or commuted sentences for nearly 1,500 January 6ers, and there's talk of him even setting up a reparations fund to cover the legal expenses for the January 6ers. Yes, reparations for all the white men who stormed the Capitol on January 6th. They're calling it reparations. Interesting choice of words, right? Reparations for white men. Ashley Babbitt was shot to death by a black police officer on January 6th. She was shot to death by a black police officer who Trump later called a thug. She was shot attempting to lead an angry mob by crawling through a broken window into the speaker's lobby. The Capitol police officer was cleared of any wrongdoing because that's what you do when people stormed the Speaker's lobby, threatening to kill the Speaker and other members of Congress, including the Vice President. Ashley Babbitt's family sued, and the Trump Justice Department has just agreed to settle with them for about $5 million. But the Washington Post reporting a congressionally mandated plaque honoring police officers who protected lawmakers on January 6, well, that's remaining unhung in the Capitol basement because Speaker Mike Johnson, speaking of unhung, reportedly feels hanging up the plaque would be disrespectful to, you guessed it, Donald Trump. A bill was signed into law mandating this plaque that you're looking at be on full display, but Mike Johnson is refusing to obey that law. Former Washington, D.C. Attorney Ed Martin, now working in the pardon office, is also busy working on a full pardon for Stewart Rhodes, leader of the Oath Keepers, who showed up for January 6 with a cache of weapons that would arm a battalion of 1,000 mercenary soldiers. Seriously. Rhodes was later convicted of seditious conspiracy, so Trump only commuted his sentence for time served. He failed to issue a full pardon, and that's a problem because under federal law, that means Stewart Rhodes can't buy a gun. You need a full pardon for that. So Ed Martin is working busily getting Rhodes that full pardon, as well as restoring the gun rights for hundreds and hundreds of January 6ers who, because of their convictions, are still unable to purchase assault weapons, because that's what Christian forgiveness is all about. Last week, Trump pardoned Scott Jenkins, the former sheriff of Culpeper County, Virginia, who was just about to begin serving a 10-year sentence after being found guilty of selling deputy sheriff badges to rich donors who wanted to dress up and play cop. Trump said the sheriff had been unfairly prosecuted by an overzealous Biden Justice Department who didn't think people should be able to buy the right to pull someone over and arrest them. Trump might pardon the two men convicted of plotting to kidnap Michigan Governor Whitmer back in 2020. Despite Trump's assurances to Gretchen Whitmer, he wouldn't pardon them. Those guys might actually deserve a pardon. We've done some reporting on that conspiracy. There does seem to be evidence the FBI moved that plot along in order to entrap these guys. It looks like they created a honeypot to get these guys. Maybe. Trump is also reportedly considering a full pardon for Derek Chauvin, the Minneapolis police officer who murdered George Floyd 5 years ago, because it's all about white male Christian forgiveness. Chauvin, a devout Christian, except when he kneels, it's on the neck of an innocent black man. Trump just pardoned the white stars of the reality television show Chrisley Knows Best, Todd and Julie Chrisley, or Chrisley, I have no idea. They were convicted for tax and wire fraud, as well as defrauding lenders for as much as $30 million when they secured loans based on forged documents, which claimed they had more money than they actually did. Imagine that. Donald Trump pardoning reality stars who rip off bankers by securing loans based on forged documents. I've never heard of anybody doing that before. Well, it's all about Christian forgiveness. And not just for white men. Also a white woman, Julie Chrisley. Look at her. Of course, she has to be blonde. Last week, Trump pardoned Paul Walshak, who, while running a chain of nursing homes, was convicted of stealing roughly $10 million in payroll taxes from his employees. That would be the nurses and home care workers. He was taking money out of their paychecks, but never paying the government. Instead, Walshak spent their withholding taxes on lavish vacations and yachts. According to the latest reporting, Walshek's mother, Elizabeth Fago, a blonde white woman, paid $1 million last month to attend one of Trump's fundraising dinners at Mar-a-Lago. She's also raised millions for Donald Trump and other Republicans going back nearly a decade, and Donald Trump miraculously pardoned her son. In 2020, Walshek's mother, Elizabeth Fago, hosted a Florida Trump fundraiser attended by Donald Trump Jr. and his then-fiancée, Kimberly Gargoyle, where a personal diary belonging to Joe Biden's daughter, Ashley, got passed around, and it was read out loud. How did it happen? Well, according to new reporting, Walshek's mother, Elizabeth Fago, this is according to old reporting as well, 4 years ago in the New York Times, Elizabeth Fago thought the diary, Ashley Biden's diary, could be of some use to Trump's reelection campaign back in 2020. So she reportedly, allegedly arranged for the people who stole the diary to come to her Trump fundraiser and read parts of the diary out loud. Test the waters to see if anybody was interested in that diary. Well, eventually, the two people who stole Ashley Biden's diary were hooked up with a right-wing group, Project Veritas, which paid them $40,000 for the diary, but then decided against publishing it. Not before, however, leaking portions of Ashley Biden's diary to right-wing pro-Trump websites in the lead-up to the 2020 election. These are good people. Trump just pardoned Trevor Milton. Trevor Milton, founder of the now bankrupt electric vehicle manufacturer Nikola, who reportedly donated $2 million to Trump's presidential campaign last year. Nikola, parenthetically, is Nikola Tesla's first name. Get it? Tesla makes electric vehicles. So Milton, Trevor Milton, he also makes electric vehicles. Actually, they're hydrogen-powered. Anyway, the company's bankrupt. So Milton, to compete with Tesla, called his electric car company Nikola. Elon Musk calls him staggeringly dumb. Milton was found guilty of defrauding investors, overstating how great these cars were. Trump's pardon now means Trevor Milton doesn't have to shell out hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars to reimburse all the investors he defrauded. He's white. Did you notice he's white? Then there's Ahmad Zuberi, who donated roughly $800,000 to Trump and the Republican Party. Miraculously, he just had his sentence commuted by Trump right after Zuberi was sentenced to 12 years for tax fraud, obstruction of justice, campaign finance law violations, and illegal lobbying. So far this year, Trump has pardoned at least 5 former elected officials. Good people, good people. He just pardoned former House Republican Michael Grimm, who represented the bad people of Staten Island, the only one of New York City's 5 boroughs that voted for Donald Trump in all 3 presidential elections. That would be Staten Island. Tony Hinchcliffe, if you're watching, there's your floating island of garbage in the Atlantic, Staten Island. Well, Congressman Grimm, a former FBI agent turned politician, was once featured on my show when I played a clip of him threatening to throw a journalist off the Capitol balcony. He has some anger issues. He's a white male. But some sad news. Last year, he suffered a neck injury while playing polo and is reportedly unable to walk, living in a New Jersey nursing home. Let's hope it's not owned by this guy, the recently pardoned Paul Walshek, who owns a chain of nursing homes. And some more sad news. Bernard Kerik, the former New York City police commissioner under Mayor Rudy Giuliani, who was also pardoned by Donald Trump back in 2020 after Kerik served time for tax fraud. Bernard Kerik died last week at the age of 69 from what is believed to have been heart disease. My condolences to his 3 wives and children, especially his first wife, and daughter who he abandoned and refused to pay child support and alimony to them. Never paid child support, never paid alimony. We talked about Bernard Kerik a lot on this show, had a lot of fun with this guy. I'm going to miss him. There was the apartment donated to 9/11 first responders cleaning up the rubble at Ground Zero that Kerik used to carry on an extramarital affair with publisher Judith Regan. So while first responders, he's a great guy. While first responders were trying to sleep and shower, they were knocking on the door, but they couldn't get in because Bernard Kerik was carrying on an extramarital affair with publisher Judith Regan. By the way, before becoming New York City Police Commissioner, he ran Rikers Island. He got his start as a corrections official. You get arrested. These are the people who run prisons, people like Bernard Kerik. When you talk law and order, our friend Bernard Kerik ran Rikers Island before becoming police commissioner. I'm going to miss him. He was a lot of fun. We talked a lot about him. I talked about how he, as New York City police commissioner under the great Rudy Giuliani, pretty much made it illegal for blacks and Hispanics to leave their homes with Giuliani's flagrantly unconstitutional stop and frisk policy. I've talked about how he and Giuliani cashed in after 9/11 by charging foreign governments for security consultations, even though Giuliani had been advised not to house New York City's terrorist command and control center inside the World Trade Center, since that was most likely going to be the first building terrorists would attack, especially since they already had, I think it was in 1993. So not smart to put your terrorist command center, your terrorism command center in the World Trade Center. Not to diminish the work of our first responders that day, but because Rudy Giuliani put the terrorism command center inside the World Trade Center, it was tough communicating that day. But Bernard Kerik, the police commissioner, is a white male. So George W. Bush, at the time, had no choice but to appoint Bernard Kerik Interior Minister of Iraq, until it was discovered Kerik hired for his children a nanny who was undocumented and was paying her under the table. That's usually the excuse they give for uncovering a lot worse, like the tax fraud, where Bernard Kerik accepted free home renovations from a mob-related construction firm. He lied to investigators about a $250,000 interest-free loan. Who gets $250,000 interest-free loans? Bernard Kerik. And there was the false statements that he made to the government about another loan. That would be the $236,000 interest-free loan from Stephen Witkoff, the New York City real estate attorney, now doing such a terrific job serving as Trump's peace envoy. It's going great in Ukraine. It's going great in Gaza. It's going great with the nuclear talks with Iran because Steve Witkoff, real estate attorney, is America's peace envoy. And so, because of little things like a couple of big lies, making false statements to federal investigators when you're up for an important job, failing to pay your taxes, Bernard Kerik ended up serving 3 years of a 4-year prison sentence. He ran Rikers Island. This was the guy in charge of New York City prisons. This is who you come to for help if you're behind bars. This is the nightmare of our penal system. You're dependent on people like Bernard Kerik. Well, he passed away, but he was also friendly with the guy who ran the Sarah Lawrence sex cult. Have you read about that guy? I think it's on Hulu. There's this fascinating documentary about the guy who ran the Sarah Lawrence college sex cult. Best friends with Bernard Kerik. And apparently that guy who ran the sex cult turned Kerik in for tax evasion. He was, Kerik offended the guy. He was too corrupt for the guy who ran the Sarah Lawrence sex cult. This is our carceral state. When you get locked up, we have 2.5 million people behind bars. You're looking at the face of our carceral system. Bernard Kerik ran Rikers Island before becoming New York City police commissioner, but he just passed away. So I choose to remember him simply as a man who was married 3 times and abandoned his first wife and daughter by refusing to ever pay them child support or alimony. After Bernard Kerik's full pardon from Donald Trump in 2020, Kerik went to work for Rudy Giuliani, traveling the country, lying about voter fraud, precipitating January 6. But then later, he told special counsel Jack Smith that the government should probably charge Donald Trump with wire fraud, since the hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars Donald Trump had raised to investigate election fraud after the 2020 election, that money was never used to pay people like Bernard Kerik or Rudy. They never got paid to investigate. Well, they weren't so much investigating election fraud as much as they were going before judges and state legislatures claiming voter fraud without any proof. Bernard Kerik, a real friend to democracy and the American people, the kind of guy you want to deal with when you're behind bars. Bernard Kerik. According to his New York Times obituary, Kerik wrote in his autobiography that when he was 3, his mother was murdered by her pimp. You see why I spend all my time reading and then I beat myself up for not reading enough? See, I had never read Bernard Kerik's autobiography. I had to read his obituary in the New York Times last week to discover that when Bernard Kerik was 3, his mother was murdered by her pimp. And when I read that, it upset me very, very much, because had I read his autobiography when it came out back in 2001, then for the past 24 years, I would have known his mother was murdered by her pimp. That way, when I talked about Police Commissioner Bernard Kerik, I could have said things like, Rudy Giuliani has uncovered evidence of massive election fraud in Pennsylvania, according to his lead investigator, former New York City Police Commissioner Bernard Kerik, whose mother was murdered by her pimp. Kerik, whose mother was murdered by her pimp, told Giuliani that boxes containing thousands of uncounted Trump ballots were disposed of in a local river. That's according to former New York City Police Commissioner Bernard Kerik, whose mother was murdered by her pimp. See, I never got to do that. See, when I read his obituary, when I read the sentence, Bernard Kerik's mother was murdered by her pimp, I looked up and I said, that's so sad. It's so sad, because he wrote that 24 years ago in his autobiography, and I never once got to mention his mother was murdered by her pimp, because I only found out about it last week while reading his obituary. See, it's sad. It's sad because there aren't enough hours in the day to read. And things like Bernard Kerik's mother getting murdered by her pimp, it slips through the cracks, and I never got to say Bernard Kerik, whose mother was murdered by her pimp, while Bernard Kerik, whose mother was murdered by a pimp, was still alive. I never got to say Bernard Kerik's mother was murdered by her pimp while Bernard Kerik was still alive. And I'm telling you, these people who Trump surrounds himself with, they are all characters out of the rise and fall of the Third Reich. They are all characters out of the rise and fall of the Third Reich. People like Bernard Kerik, who at the age of 3, his mother was murdered by her pimp. I guess what I'm saying is life is shorter than we think. This is not a dress rehearsal, so make sure things never get left unsaid. Remind people you love them, or that Bernard Kerrick's mother was murdered by her pimp before it's too late. Trump also just pardoned Rod Blagojevich, former governor of Illinois and one of the great Jerry Lewis names of all time. Mr. Blagojevich. Blagojevich is a white male who did time for literally selling Barack Obama's Illinois Senate seat after Obama became president. By the way, he was arrested while George W. Bush was still president. Obama's Justice Department prosecuted Blagojevich the following year. Obama was from Chicago. He could have pardoned Blagojevich like Trump would have done, but, Democratic governor, you pardon him. Obama prosecuted him. Now, during his first administration, Trump commuted Blagojevich's sentence. But now, this year, Blagojevich has been given a full pardon. And you know what that means? He can now buy a gun. He can buy a gun now. Interesting side note about Rod Blagojevich's mother, not murdered by her pimp. Then again, I haven't read Rod Blagojevich's autobiography either, so I can neither confirm nor deny that Rod Blagojevich's mother was or was not murdered by her pimp. And I'm not even sure she had a pimp. In fact, it pains me to say that I've never read any of Donald Trump's autobiographies. Therefore, in the interest of performing due diligence, I can neither confirm nor deny that Donald Trump's mother was murdered by her pimp. I hope it's not true, but I don't know if it's true or not true. In fact, I hope she didn't have a pimp. I hope she was a freelancer or not even working in that field. I hope Donald Trump's mother died from natural causes, and I wish she was still alive. I have nothing against the woman. But not having read any of Donald Trump's 7 autobiographies, it would be the height of irresponsibility for me to confirm or deny Donald Trump's mother being or not being murdered by her pimp, if in fact she had a pimp. Again, I hope she wasn't. But if she wasn't murdered by her pimp, then Donald Trump should just come out and say so instead of making us buy all 7 of his autobiographies to find out whether or not his mother was murdered by her pimp. Trump also pardoned John G. Rowland, the former Republican governor of Connecticut, who was sent to prison first when he was 47 after getting elected to Congress, and then again, sent to prison at the age of 57 when he became governor and committed a completely different federal crime. You see, kids, 57. Life isn't over when you turn 50. There are still plenty of crimes left ahead of you. So, Donald Trump just pardoned John G. Rowland, the former Republican governor of Connecticut. Is he a white male, you ask? Let's see. A Republican governor of Connecticut. No, he's a naturalized Tonton Macoute. He's a Tonton Macoute from Haiti. Of course he's white. He's a Republican governor from Connecticut. And here's his blonde wife. Okay? Former Republican Tennessee State Senator Brian Kelsey and chairman of the Tennessee State Senate Judiciary Committee was 2 weeks into his 21-month federal prison sentence for campaign finance law violations when Trump last week gave him a full pardon. Is he a white male? Let's see. A Republican state senator from Tennessee. Actually, he's an al-Shabaab paramilitary leader from Mozambique here on an F-1 student visa. Of course he's a white male. By the way, I should show you, this is the latest picture of him. Take a look. This is former Republican Tennessee State Senator Brian Kelsey, recently pardoned. Very sad guy. He suffers from what doctors diagnosed as an irrational fear of lip readers. Now, all of us have a slight fear of lip readers. I know I do. But as you can see, former Republican Tennessee State Senator Brian Kelsey's fear of lip readers has become borderline psychotic, and he should get that treated. Wait, do I have any women? Yes, I have a white female that Trump pardoned last week. I love this woman, and I hope you're going to love her too. She's former Las Vegas City Republican Council member Michelle Fiore. We've talked about her on the show, and yeah, she's blonde, and I got the hots for this one. She's got it all. This is her holiday card. Let me go big here. This is her holiday card from 10 years ago. Assault weapons sitting around the Christmas tree, the gift of the MAGA. This card was sent out when she was a Nevada State Assembly woman and a huge supporter of Cliven Bundy during his armed standoff with federal police officers over grazing rights. Remember that? That was back in 2014. Police officers in Las Vegas took exception to a comment Fiore made back then when she defended Cliven Bundy's sovereign citizen movement and his armed militia, who were making it impossible for federal agents from the Bureau of Land Management to remove them. As an elected state assemblywoman, Fiore said back in 2014 that Bureau of Land Management agents aren't real police officers, and she would gladly point a weapon at them in order to prevent federal overreach. Well, local police took exception, so she did what any red-blooded American MAGA female would do. She created a phony charity to honor fallen police officers, and that's how she ran into a little trouble. Turns out she doesn't care that much about fallen police officers. I mean, she said she did when she set up that charity for them. But before Donald Trump pardoned her last week, Fiore was facing 140 years in federal prison for defrauding donors to her phony charity honoring police officers killed in the line of duty. She was found guilty of using the money for fallen police officers to pay for her daughter's wedding. Oh, that's sweet, isn't it? Nothing more powerful than a mother's love. And of course, she used the rest of the money that was supposed to go for fallen police officers on something way more important, plastic surgery, so she would look her best for her daughter's wedding. Ah, yes. It's hard to thread that right-wing MAGA needle, isn't it? Hating the federal government by saying you'd point a gun at federal police officers, while at the same time insisting you're all for law and order and the local police. So you start a phony charity for fallen police officers, and then you use the money instead for your daughter's wedding and plastic surgery. I'm not sure if this is before or after. I'm not sure if this is a before or after picture. I'm going to assume it's the after picture. But she's forbidden from running a charity. And so how could Donald Trump, who's also forbidden from running a charity in New York State for similar reasons, how could Donald Trump resist a pardon for this law and order MAGA Republican? Well, I love her. I don't know if she's single or not, but this could be the next, the seventh Mrs. David Feldman. Back in 2022, Fiore was the Republican nominee for Nevada's state treasurer, and she almost won. Originally that year, she was running for Nevada governor, but dropped out in order to run for treasurer of Nevada because, as we all know, she's much better when it comes to handling public money. She would have made a great treasurer. Who knows? Had she won, the entire state of Nevada would have gotten plastic surgery. Well, let me rephrase that. The entire state of Nevada would have gotten more plastic surgery. Well, here's her campaign ad from 2022 when she was running for governor of Nevada. This is right before she dropped out to run for state treasurer. And remember, she almost got herself elected treasurer of Nevada, but this is her campaign ad for governor.
I'm Michelle Fiore, and I'm running for governor. I spent my whole life fighting the establishment. I was the first female majority leader in the Nevada Assembly and one of the first electeds to endorse Donald J. Trump. And you better believe I was attacked for it. Washington Post called me a gun-toting calendar girl, and Politico magazine said that I was the Lady Trump, and I don't care. We need outsiders, fighters, not the same old, boring, moderate, compromise, Lou Blazer politicians. Let's start with a 3-shot plan. Ban vaccine mandates, ban critical race theory, and stop voter fraud. The Joe Biden administration is coming after me. I'm Michelle Fiore, and I'm ready for the fight.
I love you, Michelle Fiore. I love her. I hope she's single. I don't know. What do you think? Did she have plastic surgery? I can't tell. What do you think? I don't know if that's... Well, she's pardoned. All right, there you have it. MAGA Republicans, a repository of self-loathing women and men with unresolved trauma. I have no idea what her trauma is, but I have a rough idea. These are white Republican politicians and businessmen and businesswomen who fail because they're stupid and they hate themselves, and they're probably right for hating themselves. And after they fail, they always do fail. It's never their fault. They're the victims. It's so unfair. How many times have you heard this imbecile Donald Trump say it's so unfair? So Trump pardons the other imbeciles because that's what he is, an imbecile. Everyone Trump pardons is white, mostly male. If they're female, they're blonde. And if they're male, well, they're white and married to a blonde, which is precisely why Trump's official White House pardon czar, working with Ed Martin inside the Justice Department, is a black woman, Alice Johnson. Trump named her pardon czar this year. He pardoned her back in 2018 while she was serving a life sentence for a nonviolent drug offense. To her credit, Kim Kardashian arranged for this pardon. And because Donald Trump is an inveterate racist, when he pardons a black woman, he's going to wring every drop of melanin out of her. He's going to put her out there as his pardon czar, so nobody can accuse him of racism, while at the same time he only pardons white people and doesn't really draw too much attention to his black pardon czar, because this administration is a celebration of white racism. This administration under Pam Bondi, our Attorney General, is investigating the black mayor of Chicago, Brandon Johnson. Why? Because Brandon Johnson, a few weeks ago, told a black church that he's proud of hiring so many black people to work for him. They said that's discrimination against white people. This administration is trying to defund Harvard, claiming, among other things, its admissions policy discriminates against white applicants. Under Pam Bondi, this administration has ordered the Justice Department to cancel consent decrees with notoriously racist police departments like Louisville, Kentucky, and Minneapolis, whose police officer, Derek Chauvin, 5 years ago, over the Memorial Day weekend, killed George Floyd and Now there's talk Trump is going to pardon Derek Chauvin. So far, Donald Trump's pardoned 3 black people this year, but all 3 were January 6ers. That's it. And I didn't see them in the crowd. I must have missed them. I must have blinked, because I've seen all the videos from January 6th. I saw neo-Nazi flags. I saw Confederate flags. Didn't see any black people that day. Even Enrique Tarrio, the chairman of the Proud Boys, who's Cuban and could be mistaken for black, knew not to storm the Capitol that day. He laid back. Didn't see any black people storming the Capitol on January 6th. Apparently there were 3. Didn't see them. Didn't see them. I saw black police officers protecting the Capitol. I heard Donald Trump referring to those black police officers as thugs. Didn't see any black people on January 6th, however, breaking down the doors of our Capitol. Same way I didn't see Black Lives Matter protesters firing shots at police or setting fires to buildings. I read about Kyle Rittenhouse shooting to death 2 Black Lives Matter protesters. Read about that. Never saw any black people shooting up a Black Lives Matter protest or firing at cops. I read about police departments all over the country paying out tens upon tens upon tens of millions of dollars in settlements to Black Lives Matter protesters because they beat them with batons while BLM protesters were marching peacefully. I live in New York City. I read about New York City cops literally driving their patrol cars into Black Lives Matter protesters. I've read study after study showing that all the violence in 2020 during the BLM marches was caused either by police or outside agitators, but never any of the Black Lives Matter protesters. And I never saw a single black person storming the Capitol. Apparently there were 3. But as I said earlier, Trump is going to pay Ashley Babbitt's family several $million because she got shot to death by a black Capitol police officer who Donald Trump won't stop calling a thug. And Donald Trump is planning to set up a fund to pay all those prosecuted January 6ers what he calls reparations. Donald Trump wants to pay them reparations to get them back up on their feet after suffering such a horrible injustice as being prosecuted for simply trying to overthrow the United States government. 3 black January 6ers are going to qualify for that fund. So to my black listeners, you want to know what it takes in America to finally get reparations? Storm the Capitol surrounded by thousands of white people. Yep, no black people, other than those 3 January 6ers getting pardoned by Donald Trump this year. But hey, the Trump administration did drop that corruption case against New York City Mayor Eric Adams, who is black, as well as a former police officer, and he's a Democrat. Not quite a pardon, though. Not quite a pardon. Adams, you might recall, was indicted last fall, charged with campaign finance law violations and accepting bribes from the government of Turkey. But the Trump Justice Department this year dropped the case after Mayor Adams met with border czar Tom Homan and then agreed to assist Tom Homan in rounding up migrants here in New York City, despite New York City being a sanctuary city. The deal was Mayor Adams would cooperate with ICE, and then charges against him would be dropped, and they were. Federal prosecutors quit after this deal was struck by Trump's former defense attorney, who became acting deputy attorney general, the homunculus Emil Bove. Look at this homunculus, Emil Bove. He is an homunculus. Emil Bove struck the deal with Mayor Adams, the deal was help Trump round up and terrorize innocent migrants in New York City, and we won't prosecute you. And that's the deal. They're not prosecuting Mayor Adams, who's running for re-election. Trump, by the way, just nominated the homunculus Emil Bove to serve as a judge. He's going to be sitting on the 3rd U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals covering the state of New Jersey, which means he's probably going to run into Alina Habba, who also served as part of Donald Trump's legal team. As of March 24th, this prodigy of jurisprudence, Alina Habba, is now serving as acting U.S. attorney for the District of New Jersey. She was a New Jersey strip mall attorney Trump hired to do some work for him at the Bedminster Golf Course. She would lounge around the pool in her bikini, and Trump thought, hey, great legal mind, and he hired her. She's a moron, but she's the new interim New Jersey attorney. I can't wait to watch those confirmation hearings before the Senate. She just filed charges against the black congresswoman from New Jersey, LaMonica McIver, charging Congresswoman McIver with assaulting law enforcement officers who were blocking the congresswoman from inspecting a for-profit ICE detention facility in Elizabeth, New Jersey. Did you watch the video? Somebody pushed the congresswoman into an ICE agent, but delicate flowers ICE agents are, that ICE agent who didn't suffer a boo-boo, not even a little owie, didn't have to go to the hospital for any treatment because she accidentally bumped into him, that ICE agent said, somebody assaulted me. And this is America. This is America, where nobody assaults an ICE agent. Nobody assaults an ICE agent in America. I mean that. Nobody assaults an ICE agent. I keep looking for evidence of one single ICE officer getting assaulted by any of the so-called terrorists they're rounding up. Not one. ICE has a page on their website of fallen heroes. Check it out. Not a single one died in the line of duty. Now, some of them died from COVID or cancer, perhaps associated with Ground Zero. But, and by the way, I don't want anybody to die. I certainly don't want any ICE agents to be hurt. But I have yet to find one ICE agent injured rounding up Tren de Aragua gang members who Donald Trump insists have invaded our country to rape, murder, and kidnap, which is why he has declared emergency powers under the Alien Enemies Act. Again, from the bottom of my heart, I don't want anyone from ICE to be hurt. I don't. I think everyone who works for ICE is a worthless coward, but I would never want to see, I mean this, I would never want to see anyone from ICE injured. I mean that. All I'm saying is, if this is an enemy invasion, why am I not seeing any of these enemy combatants putting up a fight? Again, I want to abolish ICE, but I don't want any of these ICE agents injured. I would just like them to find real work that contributes to society. I saw the black congresswoman shoved into that ICE agent, and that's what they consider an assault? That's what they consider an assault? Elon Musk throws a punch at Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent inside the White House, or Scott Bessent threw a punch at Elon Musk inside the White House, an actual punch. Nobody's pressing charges. Seriously, Caroline Leavitt, the White House spokeswoman, says there was a fight inside the Trump White House between Elon Musk and Scott Bessent. Nobody's pressing charges, but someone shoves a black congresswoman into an ICE agent, and that's assault? Yeah, it's an assault on reality. So I'm not seeing it. Not seeing this ICE agent being assaulted by the black congresswoman. I see a black congresswoman. I see a racist Trump administration pandering to its base by arresting a black congresswoman, not seeing an assault. And I don't want to see one. I don't want to see ICE agents injured. But don't tell me you have to invoke the Alien Enemies Act and then deny people due process, suspend habeas corpus because we're being invaded. Don't tell me there's a war going on. That's disrespectful to the real men and women who wear our nation's uniform. Again, I don't want any of the cowards from ICE to be shoved, to be spit upon, because I love everyone. I am nonviolent. I don't want anyone to get hurt, including the worthless scumbags from ICE. I do not want them touched. Don't want them. I just want their jobs eliminated. I just want to eliminate their jobs. That's all. Okay? If you work for ICE, you're a worthless scumbag. But I don't want anything to happen to you other than have your job abolished. Well, Emil Bove, the worthless homunculus, is now going to be a United States judge. And I get messages from listeners. They say, don't call Emil Bove a homunculus. You're better than that. Well, apparently you don't watch enough of my show because I'm not better than that. I'm not better than calling Emil Bove a homunculus. And strip mall attorney Alina Habba, now a U.S. prosecutor. Again, both served as Donald Trump's lead attorneys last year, okay? Emil Bove served as one of Trump's lead attorneys in the Manhattan criminal trial, where Trump was found guilty last year, 34 counts for paying hush money to a porn star and then conspiring to keep it secret. Emil Bove lost that case. Because of Emil Bove, Trump is now a convicted felon. So obviously, Donald Trump was left with no choice but to appoint our generation's Clarence Darrow, Emil Bove, to serve first in the Justice Department and now as a federal judge in New Jersey. Make Emil Bove a judge, despite reports of his co-workers accusing him of being verbally abusive, impossible to be around, and creating a hostile work environment. I'm sorry, not despite, because co-workers accused him of being verbally abusive and creating a hostile work environment. Trump loves that. When Elon Musk and Scott Bessent were pushing and shoving and punching, Trump came in to watch. That's what I read. He loves this. Well, before going into private practice, Emil Bove worked inside the Lower Manhattan prosecutor's office. And there's been some reporting Emil Bove was almost fired due to his rancid behavior, with some reports suggesting the only reason he didn't get fired was because it would support a judge's finding calling into question Emil Bove's honesty and integrity. According to some reporting, Bove wasn't fired because that would lend credence to accusations of his incompetence and thereby jeopardize his other cases already on the docket. That's according to some reporting that I have read. And that's why Trump nominated him to be a judge. That's why he brought him into the Justice Department. He hated Emil Bove. He really did. He would scream at him. And he said, because of you, because of your incompetence, I'm now a convicted felon. I hate you. But I have to be fair. Because I'm also hearing you're an incredibly abusive coworker. I'm hearing you create a hostile work environment. So how can I not bring you into the fold? First, as Deputy Attorney General, and now he's being moved to New Jersey. I suspect they're making him a judge in New Jersey because Attorney General Pam Bondi said to Trump, either he goes or I go. That's what I suspect. So Trump said, we're going to make you a judge in New Jersey. And I can't wait for those confirmation hearings. Alina Habba was one of Trump's lead attorneys in the New York State civil fraud trial, where, thanks to her strip mall lawyering, last year, Donald Trump got fined $500 million for defrauding lenders. Thanks to Alina Habba's prodigious lawyering, Trump now owes the state of New York $500 million. And each day he doesn't pay that, they tack on an additional $90,000 a day in interest. Who can live like that? Who can live with that hanging over his head? But I guess if you can live with that monstrosity of hyena fur dyed blonde hanging over your scalp, you can live with just about anything else hanging over your head. While both trials last year were going on, the prosecutors, the judges, and the people who work for them required round-the-clock security because Trump was constantly accusing the judges and the prosecutors of being corrupt. He called them left-wing nut jobs who hate America. During both trials, the judges were forced to issue gag orders warning Trump to stop bad-mouthing the court, the staff, our children, as well as the judges, the prosecutors, and their wife and children. But in both trials, Donald Trump violated those gag orders, and he was fined. In the hush money case, Judge Juan Merchan, whose own daughter was subject to death threats, warned Trump after fining him several times that you're this close to getting thrown in jail. The reason Juan Merchan didn't throw him in jail was he didn't want Trump to win by a landslide. Had he been thrown in jail, Trump would have won by a landslide. Judge Arthur Engoron, who presided over the civil fraud trial, was swatted. His staff received so many death threats, they stopped answering their phones. Judge Engoron fined Trump twice for violating gag orders. It didn't stop Trump from continuing to violate the gag orders, and the death threats continue. And now his lead attorney, Emil Bove, is about to become a judge. And Alina Habba is the interim New Jersey federal prosecutor. Alina Habba, while the death threats against Judge Arthur Engoron continued, she would go on television calling Judge Engoron, quote unquote, unhinged, ignorant on how banking actually works, and she accused him of being a partisan Democratic operative out to get Trump. And the death threats continued. But a black congresswoman gets pushed into an ICE agent. Habba immediately charges her with assault. And now Donald Trump's attacks against the judges are only getting worse. And thanks to last year's Supreme Court ruling, there's nothing we can do about it. It's part of his official act. He's immune. It's the official act as president. Last week, 2 separate courts ruled against Trump's tariffs, and Trump immediately laid into those judges. Now, an appeals court later overturned those court rulings, and Trump's tariffs can remain in effect until it's all sorted out by the Supreme Court, who gave Donald Trump immunity last year. Well, I want to talk about the judges in a second. I'm going to just talk about the tariffs right now. It should be noted we are halfway through Trump's 90-day self-imposed pause on these tariffs. That pause expires next month. Trump said, I'm going to use the 90-day pause to do at least one trade deal a day. So far, not a single trade deal has been signed. He announced about 18 trade deals with the United Kingdom, India, and of course China. We keep hearing that he's signed a trade deal with China, but nothing has been signed. He claims China is begging to make a deal, but so far he can't get Chinese leader Xi on the phone. Not one single trade deal has been signed. He keeps announcing he signed them or made the deal, haven't been signed because he's a liar. And then he keeps announcing new tariffs, then cancels them. The stock market goes up, it goes down. His friends buying the dips. But so far, not a single trade deal signed into law. And now, until the Supreme Court takes this case, nobody knows whether Trump is authorized to even make these trade deals. How's he going to get these trade deals signed if we don't know whether or not he's authorized? He claims he is. He declared a national economic emergency to justify these tariffs. According to the International Emergency Economic Powers Act of 1977, a president can declare broad sweeping emergency powers that allow him to negotiate tariffs all by himself without the consent of Congress if our nation faces an unprecedented economic crisis that needs immediate attention. I quoted Nobel economist Paul Krugman on my last show. Krugman wrote last week, since when is a 2.5% inflation, since when is 2.5% inflation and 4% unemployment an unprecedented economic emergency? Well, things like tariffs, even economic emergencies, are supposed to eventually be decided by Congress. But earlier in the year, Mike Johnson, the Speaker, made it impossible for anyone in the House of Representatives to so much as introduce a bill challenging Donald Trump's tariffs. On April 10th of this year, the House of Representatives passed what is called a 2026 budget blueprint. Before the House of Representatives passed a 2026 budget bill, which they did right before Memorial Day, they had to pass on April 10th what is called a budget blueprint, which sets up the rules for debate on the actual budget bill. And that budget blueprint passed by 2 votes on April 10th. And in it, Speaker Mike Johnson slipped secretly inside that bill a procedural rule that now makes it impossible for any member of the House of Representatives, Democrat or Republican, to introduce a bill that overturns Trump's tariffs. It is believed this rule stands until October 1st of 2025, but depending on what the parliamentarian says, it could possibly last throughout the entire 119th Congress. So, if you're wondering why Trump is able to grab all this tariff power acting unilaterally, it's because the Republican-controlled House surrendered these powers to him. He only has economic emergency powers until Congress revokes them, and that's not going to happen until at least after the midterms and we get Democrats inside there. So right now, all that's left is a Supreme Court willing to say no to the tariffs. All that's left now is a Supreme Court that's going to say, no, it's not an economic emergency. These tariffs are unconstitutional. But I suspect this Supreme Court will probably let the tariffs stand because Congress hasn't revoked them. I believe this Supreme Court is going to rule it's not the job of the Supreme Court to determine economic policy. It's not the job of the Supreme Court to decide whether or not we're in an economic emergency. That's how I figure this court will rule. I think they're going to rule in favor of his tariffs. But Trump, frustrated with the judges, the lower court judges, blocking his tariffs, blocking his other executive orders. Friday, he laid into Leonard Leo, Clarence Thomas's good friend, who through his Federalist Society has pretty much picked all of Donald Trump's judicial nominees, including Amy Coney Barrett, Neil Gorsuch, and Brett Kavanaugh. Trump is furious with Leonard Leo because some of his appointees are blocking Donald Trump's executive orders. They're showing loyalty to the Constitution instead of Donald Trump. And so Trump is taking to social media and inciting violence, accusing these judges of hating America, calling them sick monsters who want our country to go to hell. This kind of talk, as we know, as we saw on January 6, incites violence. Death threats against federal judges have spiked dramatically since Trump's executive orders began to get stalled by the courts. There's been reporting in the New York Times about this. Since October of last year, 277 federal judges report their lives and members of their families' lives have been threatened at least once. That's 1/3 of the entire federal judiciary living under a cloud of death threats. It's unprecedented, and it's because Donald Trump keeps leveling personal attacks against judges who disobey him. In the past 2 months, as Trump's executive orders begin to get blocked, 162 judges, federal judges, report death threats leveled against them and their families. Unprecedented. The U.S. Marshal Service protects the lives of all our judges, but the U.S. Marshal Service answers to our Attorney General, and right now that would be Pam Bondi, and this is making judges nervous. Even the judges appointed by Donald Trump no longer feel safe. The Wall Street Journal reporting that for the first time in American history, federal judges are saying they no longer trust the Justice Department to protect them. They're saying they don't trust Attorney General Pam Bondi to guarantee that the U.S. Marshal Service will protect judges who defy Donald Trump or his Justice Department, which is run by Pam Bondi. So New Jersey Senator Cory Booker introduced legislation last week calling for the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court and not the president to appoint the head of the U.S. Marshals Service. Senator Booker told the Wall Street Journal, quote, Trump has made it abundantly clear through his words and actions that he does not respect the law, court orders, the safety of our judges, or our institutions. In July of 2020, the 20-year-old son of Judge Esther Salas of the Federal District Court for New Jersey, her son was shot to death when an armed intruder broke into the judge's home, opening fire, killing her son, injuring her husband. The shooter, a deranged lawyer, was unhappy with this judge's previous rulings, not siding with him. Judge Salas's son and her husband were shot, the son fatally, after the shooter knocked on the door, claiming to be a pizza delivery man. So, MAGA supporters are now sending free pizzas to judges who rule against Trump. In the past year, 103 pizzas have been delivered to federal judges. 20 of them were delivered in the name of Judge Salas's dead son, Daniel. Not once has Donald Trump told his supporters to knock it off. Not once. When asked, Trump will say, I'm not aware of this, but it sounds like a lot of people are angry about these rulings. There's nothing I can do. Do you remember during the presidential debate in 2020, he was pressed about the Proud Boys threatening Democratic politicians, and he hemmed and hawed, and the moderator, I think it was Chris Wallace, I'm not sure, kept saying, will you tell the Proud Boys to knock it off? And eventually, Trump had to say, Proud Boys, stand back and stand by. Stand back and stand by. And I thought, a lot of us thought he had misspoke when he said that. But after January 6th, we realized he meant exactly that. Stand back, stand by. Enrique Tarrio, the chairman of the Proud Boys in May, after getting his sentence commuted, dined at Mar-a-Lago, and Trump told him, Trump was eating there. He said, I love you guys. He said, I love the Proud Boys. So, Attorney General Pam Bondi isn't going to protect our judges. She's already arrested one in Wisconsin. She's not going to protect the judges, but she will protect Trump's wealthy donors. She's not going to protect you and me from Trump's wealthy donors, but she's going to protect his wealthy donors. For example, she just shut down the unit inside the Department of Justice that prosecutes companies that sell contaminated food. So it's still illegal to sell contaminated meat. You're just not likely to get prosecuted for it. Because the organizing principle of the Trump administration is corruption, Pam Bondi has shrunk the Justice Department's Public Integrity Unit. You're going to see fewer members of Congress, fewer governors, fewer state representatives, fewer cabinet officials charged with accepting bribes, unless, of course, they're Democrats. Kash Patel, who before becoming head of the FBI was hawking pills on the internet that promised to purge your body of the COVID vaccine, he's now the head of the FBI, and he just ordered the FBI's Public Corruption Squad to be shut down. So you won't hear of the FBI arresting any Republican lawmakers, DOJA employees, or cabinet officials profiting off their positions inside the federal government. Nobody in the FBI will be keeping an eye on the thousands of Trump political appointees hired to use our federal government as their own personal ATM machines. Meanwhile, that big budget bill the House passed includes a secret provision making it harder for government officials to be prosecuted for contempt of court. Now, I don't know if this provision will make it through the Senate version of the bill, but right now, according to the House budget bill that passed before Memorial Day, if, for example, a federal judge issues a restraining order to block one of Trump's executive orders, and a government official disobeys that restraining order, this provision that Mike Johnson slipped into the budget bill defunds a judge's ability to enforce a contempt of court ruling. For example, if Judge Boasberg, for example, blocks an illegal deportation, but ICE deports these immigrants anyway, according to this provision slipped into the budget bill, they take away the judge's financial wherewithal to hold that ICE official disobeying the judge's order. The judge lacks the financial wherewithal to enforce his contempt of court order. That's in the budget bill. The Senate will be debating this next week. Speaker Mike Johnson is supposed to appoint investigators to the Office of Congressional Conduct, which looks into complaints leveled against members of the House. It is the Office of Congressional Conduct that makes referrals to the House Ethics Committee and or the Justice Department if they find corruption. But thanks to Mike Johnson, the Office of Congressional Conduct can't do their job because they're not fully staffed. For some reason, Speaker Mike Johnson has yet to hire enough people for the Office of Congressional Conduct to investigate members of the House of Representatives. Why? Well, with the slim majority, Mike Johnson can't afford another Matt Gaetz or George Santos. You might remember, to their credit, the Republican-controlled House threw George Santos out. and a special election was held, and he was replaced by Tom Suozzi, a Democrat. After passage of the Inspector General Act of 1978, the federal government established 74 federal offices of inspectors general. There is one inspector general assigned to each federal agency, as well as several smaller sub-agencies and bureaus, to root out corruption, financial mismanagement, waste, fraud, and general incompetence. They're called inspector generals because the very first inspector general was appointed by George Washington to the United States Army in 1777. He was a general, so they called him an inspector general. Now they're all called inspector generals. When Trump returned to the White House, one of his first orders was firing 19 inspector generals. And according to the Washington Post, he replaced 6 of them so far. 13 still haven't been replaced. 6 have been replaced, all of them Trump loyalists, according to the Washington Post, 2 of whom have financial conflicts of interests, others with a history of corruption, while all 6 are unqualified to be inspector generals. For example, the Washington Post reports that the new inspector general for the Department of Labor is former Republican Congressman Anthony D'Esposito, who lost his seat after it was discovered he had put his mistress and his fiance's daughter on his congressional payroll. So I don't know if his mistress, if it's his daughter, his mistress and his fiance's daughter. I don't know if he has a mistress and a fiance, or if his mistress is his fiance, but he put the 2 of them on his congressional payroll. Thomas March Bell is the new Inspector General for the Department of Health and Human Services. Bell, according to the Washington Post, was forced to resign from Virginia's Department of Environmental Quality in 1997 after a state audit discovered financial irregularities. Well, that's the Inspector Generals. The Office of Special Counsel. The Office of Special Counsel. That was established to protect federal whistleblowers from retribution and to make certain all hiring within the federal government is merit-based. Trump has had it in for the Office of Special Counsel ever since it protected the whistleblower who triggered Trump's first impeachment back in 2019. The impeachment took place in 2020, but it all started in 2019. So, upon returning to the Oval Office this year, Trump immediately fired the person in charge of the Office of Special Counsel. That would be Hampton Dellinger. And Trump was hoping to replace him with a Trump loyalist. Hampton Dellinger sued to keep his job, but after a D.C. Circuit Court ruled that Trump did have the authority to replace him, Dellinger dropped his suit. And now Donald Trump last week finally replaced Dellinger with Paul Ingrassia. Paul Ingrassia is the new head of the Office of Special Counsel. Ingrassia will be charged with aiding any federal employee who steps up and, for example, reports financial irregularities, waste, fraud, or general incompetence inside the Trump White House or any other federal agency that Donald Trump is in charge of. Ingrassia graduated from Cornell Law School 3 years ago. A true Trump loyalist, Ingrassia hosted a podcast with his sister during the 2020 presidential election 5 years ago, where after Trump lost, Ingrassia encouraged Trump to declare martial law and then refused to leave the Oval Office. This is who Donald Trump appointed to protect whistleblowers in the federal government. On July 25th, 2019, Donald Trump, I'm going to give you an example. On July 25th, 2019, Donald Trump spoke with the new president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky. He spoke with him on the phone, and members of the National Security Council, as well as the CIA, listened in because that's their job. Trump knew they were listening in. Trump said in that phone call to Zelensky, I know Congress has authorized sending you hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars worth of missiles to kick Russia out of eastern Ukraine. I know you need those missiles, but first, I need you to do me a favor. In that perfect phone call, Trump violated several laws, including an act of Congress, by holding up a weapons shipment to Ukraine until he got dirt on Joe Biden. This led to Trump's first impeachment, and the rest, sadly, is not history. Russell Vought was the head of the Office of Management and Budget at the time. He was the one who held up the arms shipment. Instead of being prosecuted, he was rewarded with the same job. He is, in the second Trump administration, Russell Vought is back as head of the Office of Management and Budget, still insisting presidents don't have to spend money allocated by Congress, despite the Impoundment Control Act of 1974 and a Supreme Court ruling during the Clinton administration that said the line item veto is unconstitutional. Okay? So what happened in 2019? Someone in the CIA heard this perfect phone call and decided to become an anonymous whistleblower. That CIA official reported the call anonymously to the Office of Special Counsel, which was established in 1978 to protect whistleblowers, to protect their anonymity, and to protect them from retribution. Ralph Nader had something to do with this. Ralph Nader had something to do with everything that's great about the federal government. So, you might remember during the impeachment, Republicans demanded to know who that whistleblower was. You're not entitled to know. It's anonymous. Okay, so I just spelled out that scenario from 2019, 2020. Imagine a whistleblower today going to Trump's new head of the Office of Special Counsel, Paul Ingrassia. What kind of whistleblower protections do you think this Trump loyalist, Paul Ingrassia, will be offering? You think he'll offer anonymity? The statute says he has to offer anonymity. Do you think he's going to protect the whistleblower? Or do you think he'll be like Devin Nunes, chairman of the House Intelligence Committee back in 2017, who kept running up to the White House telling Trump the latest on what the FBI and the CIA had on Russiagate? Think he's going to be like Devin Nunes, who is now running Trump's Truth Social media company, getting paid close to $1 million a year. He's running a business that loses hundreds and hundreds of $millions a year, but he's a loyalist, like Paul Ingrassia. Last year, Ingrassia claimed Nikki Haley couldn't serve as president because she wasn't born in the United States. This is what we got. He's fresh out of law school. Before coming to work in the special counsel office, he recently performed legal work for famed kickboxer, self-proclaimed misogynist Andrew Tate and his brother Tristan, who British prosecutors just charged with 21 counts of rape, bodily harm, and human trafficking. The Tate brothers, already on trial in Romania, charged with having sex with and trafficking minors. They are also under investigation by Romanian prosecutors for running a criminal gang. Andrew Tate has a huge social media following. He's become a beacon for American incels, a frequent guest on Tucker Carlson's podcast, as well as a huge supporter of Donald Trump, especially during last year's election. It's been reported that Trump thought it was unfair that while awaiting trial in Romania, the Tate brothers weren't free to travel to America. So immediately after returning to the White House, Romania gave permission for the Tate brothers to vacation down in Florida, where even Ron DeSantis said the Tate brothers weren't welcome in his state. It takes a lot to offend Ron DeSantis. And their trip was cut short. They returned to Romania after Florida prosecutors launched an investigation into allegations the Tate brothers were engaging in human trafficking here inside the United States. It is believed the Trump official responsible for negotiating the Tate brothers' temporary release from Romania was Richard Grenell, who in the previous Trump administration served as ambassador to Germany and was almost asked to be sent home by the German government due to his raucous behavior. Grenell, working as a European envoy for Trump earlier this year, is reported to have met with Romania's foreign minister and said it would mean a lot to Donald Trump if the Tate brothers could take a break from their trial and have some me time in Florida, and the government of Romania obliged. Richard Grenell now serves as interim director of the Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts, and shakeups continue over at the Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts now that Donald Trump fired its entire board of directors, putting himself and people like Attorney General Pam Bondi in charge of this nearly 60-year-old cultural center. Richard Grenell recently recommended a criminal referral to Pam Bondi's Justice Department after finding several $1 million in phantom donations to the Kennedy Center. This is suggesting wealthy American billionaires were using the Kennedy Center to either launder money or avoid paying taxes. This is the problem with the Trump administration. There's always a germ here. You know, they go after Harvard, they go after the Kennedy Center. You know, there's a little germ here where you say, well, you know, it's kind of right. The previous head of the Kennedy Center, for example, who Trump dismissed, was David Rubenstein, the founder of the Carlyle Group, one of the largest weapons investors in the world. Bad guy, David Rubenstein. Carlyle Group. Look it up. Bad. What you do the dirty deed, and the bribe is the job from the Carlyle Group afterwards. Like Tony Blair agrees to support the illegal invasion of Iraq, and then he gets paid by the Carlyle Group when he's no longer prime minister of Great Britain, England. You know, the Bush fan. That's you do the dirty deed, and then we pay you afterwards. David Rubenstein, founder of the Carlyle Group, bad guy, one of the largest weapons investors in the world. For some reason, has his own show on the PBS. Oh, not for some reason, because he donates millions and millions of dollars to the PBS. See, another reason, when you read that they're defunding the PBS, there's a germ of solidarity that I have with Trump, because the PBS is very corrupt. Throughout his presidency, Joe Biden, along with his family, spent their Thanksgiving holidays inside Rubenstein's Nantucket estate, free of charge. Every Thanksgiving, Joe Biden and his family would vacation in Nantucket, living in David Rubenstein's Nantucket estate. There once was an arms dealer from Nantucket whose beak dipped into every federal bucket. He bought the Kennedy Center until Trump decided to enter, and now David Rubenstein can go suck it. Well, at least I didn't do animation. Is anybody still here? Trump, by the way, was asked during Friday's, speaking of Joe Biden, Trump, by the way, was asked during Friday's Oval Office press conference if he had any prayers for President Biden, who, as we know, has been diagnosed with an aggressive form of bone cancer. Trump said no. Trump said, if you feel sorry for him, don't. He's a vicious man. He hurt a lot of people. Don't feel sorry for Joe Biden. Well, Trump replaced David Rubenstein as head of the Kennedy Center with himself. And one of his first hires for vice president of development for the Kennedy Center, tasked with fundraising, was this horrible guy, Floyd Brown, the far-right political operative who first rose to prominence back in 1988 when he produced the infamously racist Willie Horton attack ad, suggesting Michael Dukakis, the Democratic challenger to then Vice President George Herbert Walker Bush, was soft on crime. One of the most racist attack ads. Floyd Brown did that. He's a Christian, devout Christian now. Devout. And Trump hired him to do the fundraising. But Floyd Brown says he's been fired from the Kennedy Center by Richard Grenell, who runs the Kennedy Center, after Richard Grenell ordered Floyd Brown to denounce his condemnation against gay marriage. You see, Richard Grenell, besides being our ambassador to Germany during the first Trump administration, was also the first openly gay cabinet member in American history, after President Donald Trump appointed him acting director of national intelligence in February of 2020. And now he's running the Kennedy Center, and he reportedly took exception to Floyd Brown's previous complaints about same-sex marriage because he supports traditional Christian marriage as opposed to same-sex marriage. And Floyd Brown, he of the Willie Horton ad, now claiming Richard Grenell discovered through CNN that Floyd Brown doesn't approve of gay people. And Floyd Brown claims he was ordered to take back his comments about same-sex marriage, or you're going to be fired from the Kennedy Center. And Brown refused to take back his comments. He's gone, fired by Richard Grenell. Floyd Brown claims he's being persecuted for being a Christian. Yes, he's being persecuted for being a Christian who wants to persecute homosexuals. This is why fascism always fails. This is all stuff out of the rise and fall of the Third Reich. These are stories just have been reworked originally from the rise. This is Ernst Röhm crap. This is, anyway, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is also openly gay, married with children. As I said earlier, there are now reports he and Elon Musk engaged in some sort of physical altercation when it comes to the tariffs. Elon Musk is opposed to the tariffs. Bessent is for them. And there was screaming, shoving. According to Caroline Leavitt, the White House press secretary, punching. Meanwhile, during his farewell press conference on Friday, Musk is leaving, by the way. Musk showed up sporting a black eye, which he blamed on X, his 5-year-old son, who said he wanted to punch his daddy. So Musk said, go ahead, give me what you got. And the kid did what every other Musk child wanted to do, give daddy a black eye. The New York Times is out with an expose on Elon Musk's alleged drug abuse. According to this article in the New York Times, and I recommend you read it, his ketamine intake has become so aggressive, Musk is privately complaining he's lost bladder control. More bad news for Elon Musk. New reports Tesla's April sales in Europe plunged by almost 50%, with nearly half of all Tesla owners complaining their cars have been vandalized. In an interview last week with CBS News, Musk complained, quote, "People burning Teslas? Why would you do that? That's really uncool." You know what else is really uncool? Burning the federal government. Now, I don't approve of anybody vandalizing Teslas, but I also don't approve of anybody vandalizing my federal government. Elon Musk called USAID a criminal organization, a viper's nest of radical left Marxists who hate America. And he described USAID as evil and beyond repair. USAID is the world's largest provider of foreign aid, of food and medicine. But thanks to Elon Musk succeeding in cutting billions of dollars in foreign aid, not making a dent in the budget deficit, but cutting billions in foreign aid, thanks to Elon Musk, the Washington Post reporting, as well as Brooke Nichols, a Boston University infectious disease economist, reporting that an estimated 96,000 adults and 200,000 children have died because of Elon Musk's cuts to U.S. foreign aid. According to the Washington Post, that comes out to 103 people dying per hour. Per hour. The cuts to U.S. aid, according to the Washington Post, according to Brooke Nichols, Boston University infectious disease economist, according to them, Elon Musk's cuts to U.S. aid so far have killed 96,000 adults and 200,000 children, which comes out to 103 people dying per hour. But Musk is doing what all fascists do, playing the victim. Playing the victim. He's the victim. He told CBS News, quote, "Doja is just becoming the whipping boy for everyone." He doesn't like being scapegoated. Doesn't like being scapegoated. Well, if you don't like being scapegoated, Elon Musk, think about that the next time you pour millions of dollars into the Alternative for Germany party, which is made up of far-right neo-Nazis who you agree with. You said you agreed with them when they say Germans should stop feeling bad about the Holocaust, and when they call Hitler a socialist. That's the big tell when someone's a Nazi or a neo-Nazi, when they call Hitler a socialist, because his party was, that Nazi means National Socialists. Anybody who tells you Hitler was a socialist because he called the party National Socialists is a Nazi. It's been a bad week for Elon Musk. His SpaceX Starship system exploded once again, this time on Tuesday during a test flight. His Starship system is supposed to carry astronauts to the moon, as well as score huge federal contracts from Donald Trump's proposed $250 billion Golden Dome missile defense shield. You know, I'm starting to think maybe we need that Golden Dome missile defense shield to protect us from the showers of falling debris that scatter over us every time Elon Musk's rockets blow up in midair. I guess for a guy who can only conceive through artificial insemination, having your missile explode in public makes you feel like a real man, Elon. Musk leaves Washington with plenty of new he leaves Washington with plenty of new federal contracts for his satellite and rocket companies. Plus, how am I doing on time here? All right, plowing ahead. Plus, a federal judge just gave Doja workers access to practically all our government data, which suggests Musk's artificial intelligence system, Grok, will perhaps gain access to all your personal data. And if that doesn't happen, there's always Peter Thiel. Musk made his fortune through PayPal along with Peter Thiel, who, besides being a large Trump donor, is also right now the largest shareholder of Palantir. Palantir. Get to know Palantir. According to the New York Times, the Trump administration is now paying Palantir to build a massive database of personal information on all Americans so federal agencies can communicate better with each other. Yeah, that's why. But tell me again how Trump is waging war against the deep, dark state. Palantir is building a massive database on all your personal information for the federal government. But Trump's waging war against the deep, dark state. Meanwhile, Elon Musk, by the way, that's him with his black eye that X gave him. Take a look at that. Elon Musk says he's disappointed with Trump's new budget bill, complaining there aren't enough cuts and it's only going to increase our debt. Okay, how about we cut all your SpaceX, Grok's, contracts for Grok and your satellite contracts? Why don't we start there? The Washington Post reporting that because of DOGA cutbacks, the Federal Emergency Management Agency has failed to respond to 19 requests for emergency relief from states devastated by recent tornadoes. The Post reporting that one source says after last year's Hurricane Helene, there weren't nearly as many FEMA requests going unanswered as they are today. Remember after Hurricane Helene, how Trump insisted Biden was leaving people to die? The Washington Post also reporting thanks to DOGA cutbacks inside the Food and Drug Administration, most Americans don't know that there was a major E. coli outbreak earlier this year. See, there's no money to warn people there's some bad lettuce out there. So, no money for food stamps, no money for Medicaid, but plenty of money for Trump's big military parade, which has now been scheduled for June 14th, his 79th birthday. Now, there are no plans at the moment for the Army to sing him happy birthday during this parade because Trump prefers the horse vessel song. They estimate the Army parade will cost at least $45 million, but that doesn't include what Washington, D.C. is going to have to spend to clean up after the parade. It's going to be expensive because Trump's birthday parade includes 28 M1A1 Abrams tanks, which weigh 70 tons each, and they're going to chew up Constitution Avenue, where Trump's reviewing stand will be. That means someone is going to have to repair the streets. But if you want food stamps or Medicaid, you have to work for it. Trump's defense secretary during his first administration was Jim Mattis, and he opposed the idea of a military parade in honor of Trump's birthday. Mattis said, "I would rather swallow acid than have this parade." The parade didn't take place. Back then, General Paul Selva explained to Trump that military parades are what dictators do. And Trump thought, let's do it. They didn't. Now they are. Now he's getting his parade. Why? Why is he getting his parade? Why? Because Mark Milley, Trump's former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, last year told Bob Woodward, "I have no doubt that Donald Trump is a full-bore fascist." Trump's former chief of staff, General John Kelly, said, yes, by the very definition of the word, Donald Trump is a fascist. General Kelly gave an interview, and during the interview, he looked up the word fascist and said, yep, he's a fascist. $45 million at least for the parade, while Republicans cut $1 trillion from Medicaid and food stamps. And because their constituents are getting angrier and angrier at them, House Republicans were told by Speaker Mike Johnson back in March during the last vacation, don't hold any more town halls. Trump told them, don't hold any more town halls. They're embarrassing. The House Speaker, Mike Johnson, and Donald Trump said, these town halls are being interrupted by paid protesters. That's what they said. Because only a paid protester could be upset about a $1 trillion cut to Medicaid and food stamps, while the richest 1% get a $4.5 trillion tax cut that adds $4.5 trillion to our debt. Only a paid protester would be upset by this. The nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office says the budget that just passed in the House, with its cuts to Medicaid, will leave 7.6 million Americans without insurance. But it's paid protesters who are showing up to the town hall to complain. On Friday, Senator Joni Ernst, the Republican from Iowa, held a town hall in Butler County, Iowa. She was asked about these cuts to Medicaid by one of these, has to be a paid protester. And one of these paid protesters says, why are you cutting $1 trillion from Medicaid and food stamps? And Joni Ernst lied. She lied. She didn't mention the work requirements for Medicaid. Instead, she lied and said, oh, no, don't worry. Only illegal immigrants will be denied Medicaid. She didn't mention work requirements for Medicaid. She just lied and said, don't worry, we're only throwing 1.4 million illegal immigrants off Medicaid. As if that's supposed to make the good people of Iowa feel better. Well, it's not just cruel, it's a lie, because they're throwing American citizens off Medicaid. 7.6 million Americans are going to lose their insurance. Okay? And one of the paid protesters said, after she said, don't worry, it's only 1.4 million illegal immigrants who are going to lose Medicaid. One of the paid protesters shouted, but people are going to die. And Joni Ernst responded, quote, well, we're all going to die. I was going to play the clip. The paid protesters were shocked. They actually began to boo her because only a paid protester from Iowa would boo a Republican senator responding to 1.4 million illegal immigrants getting thrown off Medicaid by saying, well, we're all going to die. Yeah. Ron Johnson is the Republican senator from Wisconsin who, before turning to Republican politics, made his fortune the old-fashioned way by marrying into it. He married a very wealthy woman. To the manor born now. During his town hall, a student asked him about this budget bill's massive tax cuts for the rich. And Johnson, who married into money, said, "Let me tell you something. No poor person ever created a job," unquote. Guess what, Ron Johnson? No rich person ever created a job without the government helping. These tax cuts for the rich, what do they do with that $4.5 trillion? They hoard their money and try to pass it on to their daughters so people like Ron Johnson will marry them. And finally, wow, I brought it in under 2 hours. Wow. On March 27th of this year, Donald Trump ordered Vice President J.D. Vance to remove improper ideology from the Smithsonian museums. So J.D. Vance began investigating the Smithsonian for diversity. On Friday, Trump fired Kim Saget, the director of the Smithsonian's National Portrait Gallery. He said, "We got to get rid of her. She's divisive and guilty of diversity. She's guilty of diversity, equity, and inclusion." Not because she's the first woman to serve as the gallery's director or that she was born in Nigeria. She's divisive. So why did he fire her? Here's what I think the real reason Trump fired her. The portrait gallery houses portraits of all our presidents. And there's a portrait of Donald Trump. And underneath that portrait of Donald Trump, it reads, "Impeached twice, acquitted by the Senate, won a non-consecutive second term after losing to Joe Biden in 2020. You can't say the president lost to Joe Biden in 2020. That's why she was fired. By the way, the president doesn't get to fire anybody who works for the Smithsonian. So we'll see if the firing sticks. I'm David Feldman, reminding you to stay strong and protect the weak. Thank you for listening. Please share this episode. Please share this episode. It's hard to find an audience with what I'm doing these days. So please share this. Please like this. Please tell your friends about this show. Please leave a comment. I read all your comments. If I said something factually incorrect, let me know. Leave a comment. If you disagree with me, leave a comment. Thank you for all your comments. I read them all. Thank you to Bob and Mila in the chat room. And I have a new closing. Do we like this? My nephew Leonard made these, did a photo shoot. It says the David Ferdman. I paid him to do a photo shoot. Ah, damn him. He got my name wrong. It's the David my own nephew. Can't spell David. Damn you, Leonard. Okay, thank you. This was a lot of fun. Check your privilege. Pay attention to who's really suffering right now and help them. If you're suffering, ask for help.